The flames advanced very rapidly, continued to spread, and before they had arrived opposite to the place where I stood, formed a blaze of fire nearly a mile in length. How shall I describe the sublime spectacle that then presented itself? I have seen the old Atlantic in his fury, a thunderstorm in the Alps, and the cataracts of Niagara, but nothing could compare to what I saw at this moment. The line of flame rushed through the long grass with tremendous violence and a noise like thunder, while over the fire there hovered a dense cloud of smoke. The wind, which even previously had been high, was increased by the blaze which it fanned, and with such vehemence did it drive along the flames. The large masses of them appeared to actually leap forward and dart into the grass several yards in advance of the line. It passed me like a whirlwind, and with a fury I shall never forget. Anonymous author from Travels through the United States in 1828.
Hi, my name's Emily Herring. I'm the naturalist with Marshall County Conservation, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today to learn about using controlled burns to manage prairies. In today's video, we'll talk about the history of fires on the Great Plains and in Iowa. We'll discuss the benefits of using fire to manage prairies. We'll also talk about gear needed to safely conduct controlled burns, as well as step-by-step process in conducting a controlled burn. If you have any questions about this subject, feel free to reach out to us at Marshall County Conservation, and I hope you enjoy today's video.
There is much debate in the historical ecology world which came first, grasslands or fire. By measuring the charcoal content in sediment, scientists have found that fires became fairly regular during the beginning to mid-Holocene epoch, some 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. But why? Starting 50 million years ago, the Rocky Mountains were formed, and with the help of rivers, debris east of the range was eroded away. This created the wide, flat plains of the Midwest that we know. The mountains also created a rain shadow that blocked moisture from the Pacific from reaching the plains. Also at this time, shifts in ocean currents began the global cooling and a general decrease of moisture. This led to the then dominant tropical forest demise. Because grasses can survive on less moisture, over the next several million years, they became the dominant plants of the Great Plains. The Ice Age then began 2 to 3 million years ago, which entailed long cold periods and glaciers covering and retreating many times across Iowa and the Great Plains. This global climate change brought more moisture and allowed for wood and shrubby vegetation to grow and flourish. This encouraged animals like woolly mammoths, bears, camels, and bisons to roam the plains during the Pleistocene epoch. 18,000 years ago, the Earth began to warm again. The ice began to melt. As thousands of years passed, humans began to migrate into North America. During this warming, large animals like the woolly mammoth went extinct, either due to climate change, human presence, or both. The forests and shrubby plants disappeared, and grasslands became the dominant plant cover. This second formation of grasslands is where the debate lies. Was it formed from climate change, or now that humans inhabited North America, did their use of fire create the historical prairies of the Great Plains? What scientists have found in soil studies is that around 2,000 years ago, moisture began to increase in the Midwest. Grasses began to grow thicker and more dense, giving more fuel for the abundant fires that burned over the landscape. This moist climate change should have encouraged the growth of trees and shrubs. However, the fires prevented their growth. Thus, the clear partnership of the fire and grassland formation and maintenance began. Those that argue that humans are more responsible for the grassland formation and prairies back this argument by the fact that most fires set naturally by lightning occurred during the summer months of July and August. However, when historical journal entries are studied, 40% of fires actually occur during the fall, 30% in summer, 22% in spring, and 10% in winter. Regardless of who wins the debate, by the time European colonization, fire was a common, beautiful, and dangerous occurrence on the Great Plains. The Indians and hunters annually set fire to the prairies in order to dislodge the game. The fire spreads with tremendous rapidity and presents one of the grandest and most terrible spectacles in nature. Nothing can be more melancholy than the aspect of a burnt prairie, presenting a uniform black surface like a vast plain of charcoal. From whatever cause the prairies at first originated, they are undoubtedly perpetuated by the autumnal fires that have annually swept over them, from an era probably long anterior to the earliest records of history. Ellsworth, 1837. Fire use with native people was a vital part of their lives. They used fire in many ways, including their number one reason for communication using smoke signals. They also used fire for hunting, war, and pasture improvements. By using fire, people on the plains could manipulate the migration of buffalo, which were attracted to the new fresh green grass that grows after a fire. Pioneers and ranchers in the 1800s too learned that it was a vital maintenance of the prairie of the Midwest. Prairie fires were dangerous and could often destroy a European's homestead in a matter of minutes, and many lives were lost to fires that raced across the open plains. By the 1900s, fire suppression became a policy in many government agencies. However, it wasn't until the 1940s that fire suppression was truly effective due to vehicles, roads, and firefighting equipment. It was in the 1930s that scientists realized that fire played a very important role in prairie ecology as well as forests. It wasn't until the 1960s that talk began to move away from fire suppression and into controlled burns. Controlled burns have many benefits for the environment. Today we're going to mainly focus on prairies. However, forests also benefit from controlled burns. For prairie fires, a controlled burn helps the overgrowth of invasive woody species and trees. Plants like sumac, raspberry, and trees like cottonwood often encroach into prairies. A slow-moving burn will often kill the plants or at least set them back. This allows plants to receive full sunlight again. Prevention of wildfires. This more commonly falls into woodlands. However, the burning of fuel prevents the buildup of excessive fuel, which can create large, uncontrollable fires. Prairie fires have been studied and found to boost production in declining prairie species. After a fire, purple coneflower is known to produce more seeds. Fires also create a more environmentally hospitable location for regeneration and growth. An open seed bed is created, as well as tied up nutrients in the dead plants quickly become nutrients for plants to intake. The sunlight warms the blackened earth quicker and encourages the growth of dormant plants.
My name is Tyler Renzi, Maintenance Technician with Marshall County Conservation. When carrying out a controlled burn, many tools and equipment are used to safely and effectively complete each burn. I'm going to talk about different types of tools that we use on a controlled burn. But first, I think I'm going to talk about the PPE that keeps us safe during a controlled burn. So I'd first like to talk about the shirt and pants. They're called Nomex. They're kind of a flame-resistant material. Underneath the shirt and pants, it's highly recommended to be wearing a cotton-type fiber, non-synthetic. Synthetic materials tend to ignite faster than the cotton. A good pair of leather boots, a good pair of leather gloves. For the smoke, if you're in the smoke quite a bit, wearing a set of goggles is ideal to keep the smoke out of your eyes. So when thinking about a controlled burn, we like to think of it in 4 separate steps. The first step being preparation, the second being ignition, holding, and then mop up. So the first step of preparation, it usually entails us going out with a batwing mower and tractor and mowing fire breaks 4 times a growing season. You could also use a regular mower if you're in a small prairie area, or if you're in a crop field, lightly disking just along the grass is an ideal preparation procedure. Another thing that we do in preparation is trying to keep all of the trees off of our fire breaks, so that way we don't have a tendency of fire to crawl up the dead down tree and get into areas that we do not want the fire. Second step being ignition. There's different ways to ignite a fire. First, use a lighter to get a little bit of fire on the ground. You can drag the fire around with a rake. It is much more efficient and effective to use a drip torch. A conventional drip torch works well, but a Panama style drip torch works the best in carrying fire along your fire break. After your fire is set and you've drug your fire around, you're gonna do what's called holding. And you're gonna keep that fire in the area you want burned and not have it creep out past your burn break. So in that instance, we use the ATV spray rig, where we spray the back edge of the fire as it's creeping across the burn break. If it's just a small amount of fire, again, you can use a rake to rake the fire back into the burned area on the black. If you could also use a leaf blower to blow the fire, but make sure that we blow it into the black area that's already been burned. The truck can also be used with holding, but we typically only use the truck to refill our ATV spray rig when we're out of water, or we'll use it to unreel and get some few smoky trees if a tree would happen to ignite up and put the tree out. So after a holding, we would have mop up. And mop up, again, some of the same equipment is used to put out any smoldering pieces of grass or trees or any debris that would be on the edge or outside of the fire break. And so applying water to that debris, as well as a leaf blowing, works well. And then also there's a piece of equipment called a flapper, which is used to smother out any small little embers that might happen to be on the edge of your fire break. And that is a gist of all of the tools that we would use on a controlled burn here in Marshall County Conservation.
There are many things to take into consideration when conducting a controlled burn, with some planning occurring months in advance. This includes planning and maintaining good burn breaks, determining the time of year to promote growth of certain plant species, making sure your burn is occurring before bird nesting season, burning only a portion of the prairie to leave habitat for animals including birds, reptiles, and insects, making sure your gear is in good working order and ready to go, checking the weather and making sure the smoke will not block visibility on roads or fill a neighbor's home, also making sure there are no burn bans or red flag warnings. You'll want to go over the plan with those helping you burn and drive the perimeter, make sure there are no hazards. And right before the controlled burn, you'll want to contact the sheriff's department to let them know the location of the controlled burn in case they get phone calls from concerned neighbors or onlookers.
We're going to conduct a controlled burn at Marietta Sand Prairie on the northeast corner of this sand prairie. We're going to start by lighting our back burn on the south edge of this segment, and we're going to run our fire all the way to the west end of the fire break. Then we will let it back burn a little ways, run to the north end of the segment, let it back burn some more, and then once we are comfortable with the amount of black that we have, we will ring this piece of prairie, and it should burn nicely for us.
Thank you for joining us today to learn about controlled burns. If you have any questions about controlled burns or the areas that we conduct controlled burns on, please feel free to reach out to us at Marshall County Conservation 641-752-5490 or email us at mccb@marshallcountyia.gov. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful spring.